watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message.
And what we're looking at is exactly what it says, that our lives have purpose, that your life has meaning, and there's a reason, and there's an overarching kind of purpose for your life. Because, you know, God and who He is has been in love with us ever since He created us, and He put a lot of time and effort into bringing us about, and He's got a great life for us, and you know, you hear that in church, and the fact that you're here and you're sitting here means that that's of interest to you in some way, shape, or form. Whether you believe in Him or not, have been all your life, or somewhere in between, you're here to kind of wrestle with it maybe. So I want to start right off the bat today with 5 words, a little statement that I want you to take with you through the course of this message, throughout the time that we're here. And when you leave today, I want you to take it with you and carry it into your life. And it's this: your purpose is an opportunity. Your purpose is an opportunity. Now, there's a lot about that when we think about that. And one of the very first things we need to think about is, well, I kind of need to know what my purpose is before I can start to find opportunity in that. And purpose is really all about the reason that we do things. There's a reason why we do things, and the purpose also drives what we do and how we do it. Now, we have a fair amount of time during the week. We all have 168 hours. We sleep about 56 of those. Some of you more, some of you less, kind of depends. That leaves about 112 hours, and of that, we spend about a third of that working. Think about that for a second. About 40% of our time is 30 to 40% of our time is spent working. And what that means is that we are carrying out our purpose in our work, whether we like to believe that or not. But our work is a little bit of a difficulty for some people. For other people, it's great. They love work. They love everything about it. But for a lot of people, they hate it. It drains them. But there is a purpose in our work. Now, it might depress you or excite you to think about all the time you spend at work. It might excite you or depress you to think about what goes on at work. But when we're talking about purpose, when we're talking about seeking opportunity in our purpose, it has to include work. But that's really difficult to grasp onto when it seems like work is kind of like there's a bottom line to it, that it's impersonal, that nobody really cares about you, that it's just sort of a grind. I learned this when I was 17. I worked as a broiler chef in a steakhouse in a mall. Now, when you're 17 and they call you a broiler chef, that's awesome, right? So it was one of those places where you lined up and you got a tray and you went through the line, you got your dessert or whatever, and then there was this spot where we were cooking your steak or whatever you ordered in front of you. Our backs were turned to you. And I learned early on in this job that I wasn't really quite sure what they were after. Because I wasn't sure whether they wanted me to cook great tasting food or they were just interested in making money. And then I thought, it seems like they're just trying to sell a bunch of stuff more than what they sold the year before. So picture this, like there's all this buzz, it's loud, we're cooking, there's like 3 of us. People are going through the line and we're cooking, and the manager would pace behind us and like threaten us. threaten our lives, and he would like down low so nobody would see. Like he'd smile at everybody, he'd turn around and go, "We sold 10 more T-bones last year. What is your problem? Get going." And he would curse at us and stuff like that. He would say, "We need 4 more sirloin tip dinners to beat last year. You guys are stupid." And I was like, "Dang, man, this is really bad." But I really didn't consider their purpose. I really didn't care. I had my own purpose for working. I figured I cooked steaks to make enough money to put gas in my 73 Beetle and take my girlfriend out. That was the only motivating purpose that I had, and it was a simple one. There wasn't much complex at age 17 for that. I could put up with just about anything as long as I was free and independent and, take my girlfriend out. But you and I know that purpose and questions about life and complexity about things like this goes much deeper, and it speaks to something much more serious. And believer or not, if you're sitting here, you braved the elements today, or you're sitting out there in the world of Facebook chilling out, you know that there is something that's kind of nudging you or tugging you at you when you start to think about purpose and you start to think about your work. You might ask yourself, is there something more to this daily grind that I have? Is this life that I crank out every single day all there is? And the answer to that question is no, it's not all there is. There is so much more. The purpose that God lays out for us is so amazing that it just screams to us that there's a lot more, and you're in a great place to learn about that. But it's important that we address things like work because it is part of the bigger purpose. So you should keep searching. You should keep coming. It doesn't matter how well you think you know about God and what goes on and your life and stuff. You should keep coming and searching and growing and learning, because we have a responsibility, if we're going to follow God, to carry this kind of idea out into the world that really needs him. Why don't you pray with me? God, work can be a very irritating, annoying, wonderful, fulfilling place, but it really is a major part of purpose. And a lot of times we like to disregard it, but it's got a lot to tell us about how we follow you. And that's what we're after today. We want to figure out the overall purpose of our life. Where does that stand, and how can we operate better so that we're being whatever you want us to be? You say that you love us, and you've got something to tell us, so let's figure it out here. We love you, and we pray this in your name. Amen. So we're going to go where we always go to understand what God is saying. So we're going to look in his book, the Bible, and you can get a free copy of the Bible out in the lobby, the Get Connected table, where a lot of our fine volunteers are. Excuse me. But you can also go to forefrontchurch.info, and we have kind of a digital hub set up there. Jason talked about it in the announcement video. But not only is there a Bible in there for you to refer to, but there's some notes on some things that we're going to talk about today. There's different tabs and cards in there that you can hit to learn about different events and things that we have going on here, and you should engage that. It kind of help you to understand a little bit more about church and God and items like that. So to wrestle with this idea of work and purpose and how it fits in the overall, I kind of wanted to break this up into kind of two bigger parts. So the first thing I want to do is kind of take a look at our overall purpose in the eyes of God. Jason did a great job kind of unpacking this a little bit last week, but we're going to do kind of the similar thing, but we're going to look at it with just through the eyes of a writer in the New Testament by the name of Paul. We've attributed about 13 to 14 writings to him, and we're going to be in a section of a writing called 1 Corinthians in chapter 10. Now, 1 Corinthians, interesting name. All that means is that he was in the city of Corinth, writing to a group of people called the Corinthians. He built a church there. He planted it there, as he did around the entire rim of the Mediterranean. So he's teaching them. He gets it up and running. He moves to the next place, does the same thing. And he writes letters to these churches, kind of instructing them and telling them, kind of like what we do here, teaching, learning, growing, how do we become followers of God. So that's kind of what he's doing. And in this verse that we're in chapter 10, verse 31, he says this: "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God." So the very first thing we have to wrestle with are those three words, whatever you do. That's a very kind of high bar. We do it all for God. What it's saying here is no matter what, every aspect of your life, all of your circumstances, everything that you're about, we do it for God. And that includes our work. But this verse doesn't pop out of nowhere. There's 30 verses before this, and Paul kind of sets up a context for us, and he kind of talks to us about what this means in kind of the bigger picture. So when we arrive here, we're not just sort of like, what does this mean? So if you read the very beginning of chapter 10, he talks about his ancestors, the very first people that were in faith, and kind of how they messed it up, and kind of how they walked, but they weren't walking with God, and how displeasing this was to God. And then the next thing you read, you go a little bit further, and you read about something that says, remain clear of the worship of self. That's very interesting. The worship of self. So I thought when I was kind of putting this together, I thought, man, that's a good sidebar. God's teaching always points us away from us and towards others or to Him. When you read the Bible and you study the Bible and you start to learn what God has to say, you're going to run across this sentiment a lot. It's a little bit uncomfortable, honestly, when you see it for the first time. You're like, man, this really isn't about me. God always points us away. So that's a good thing to think about as you kind of go through. So when you read the rest of these verses leading up to 31, you read about things like there's going to be temptation lurking. Be careful. There's going to be things that you're going to want to do. Don't. There's going to be things that are they're all right, but they're not really all that constructive. Maybe you should remain clear of those. It says other things like seek the betterment of others. And then we get to this verse 31, and he says, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. And here's the deal. He's saying everything. And the three words that are really difficult for us, all of us, is this glory of God idea. If you were to go through every single day and every minute of your day and you did everything for you, if you benefited yourself and that's what you were focused on and you wanted to make sure that it was all about you, you would be doing things for the glory of you. It wouldn't, you wouldn't really matter as long as you were taken care of. So the glory of God idea, which really is what identifies the overall purpose, if you want to know why you're here, is what Paul is saying, we do it all for God. Everything. He's your reference point. Your behavior, your words, your actions, your integrity, your ethics, everything is about Him. Living for Him. Aim for Him. Have your eyes fixed on Him. No matter what you do. And this has there's a byproduct to this, which is really important for Christians, for people who say they follow God. You have an impact on the people around you. If you're out for the glory of yourself, yet you claim God, you're going to push people away. If you're out for the glory of God, and we're not perfect, we're not going to get it right 100% of the time, people are going to start to be attracted to this idea, and people who don't know God may start to get to know God. And Paul repeated this message over and over to all of the different churches that he built and created and taught and wrote to. And a writer who writes commentary on these verses in these books wrote this about that verse. There's no part of our life, no action so minute that it ought not be directed to the glory of God, and we must take care that we aim at the advancement of it, moving it forward. That yes, God can do everything He wants to, but He uses us as His agents to bring this about. So our purpose, glorify Him and have Him known, kind of what Jason talked about last week. Now, I understand that maybe God doesn't occupy the top spot in your life that would move you to this, but again, you came out in a really bad, rainy, cold day to sit here. There's something that you're thinking about. There's something tugging on you. Maybe you're not quite there, but I would say the very first thing you should start to reconcile is the possibility that God exists true? And if He is, maybe there's a bigger purpose, because believer or not, our purpose is to honor Him and to glorify Him. That is completely our purpose. And that includes our work. That place that we hate. That place that we love. The place that drives us crazy. The place that seems to suck all of our time out of our life. the place that might give us great hope for the future, or it's just a dead end and we can't stand it. We actually have anxiety about getting up and going to it in the morning. And part of the reason this is because we don't often connect work to our overall purpose. We look at work as its own sort of entity with its own goals and its own motivations. This is a little bit of a slippery slope for people of faith because it's just like, work's over there. Like, I just don't, it's just there, all right? So we go there, we grin and bear it, or we get after it, and then we're away from it because it's just separate. Now, as long as I can remember, from the time I can remember, I was instilled with sort of a utilitarian view of work. And what I mean by that is that it's practical, it's essential. Get out there and work hard. That if you work hard, you'll get success. And that it was almost like a character trait to get out there and do it. It was a means to an end. It was almost like a duty. It has its purpose. There was never a bigger purpose attached to it. I did not grow up in faith. There was no connection to that whatsoever. I grew up with people who were very hardworking and very structured and go do that, earn that, whatever. So when I was 8 years old, our family moved from New York to Arizona. And I was just blown away by like the desert and the mountains and stuff like that. So I decided I would set up a rock stand in front of my house where I was going to sell rocks. Very low overhead compared to a lemonade stand. I mean, all you have to do is find some rocks. But I had a very, very important reason for doing this because I'd been looking through the Sears catalog. Now, there's some of you in here like, what is that? Like, the Sears catalog was where you went. It was the analog Amazon of the day, right? And you would look up stuff and you'd go, oh, I want that. Now, when I was raised, you didn't buy anything unless you had the money for it. And I spied a basketball in that Sears catalog, and I wanted to buy that. So I sold rocks. I collected Coors beer cans, one of the first sort of recyclable kind of efforts. You could take, 500 pounds of cans to the grocery store and get 10 cents. I don't know what it was. But I would get this money, and the purpose, what was the purpose? Work, buy something, right? So I was 15 years old. We moved back to New York. And I was working in a vineyard in a little winery in my town. And this farmer, he knew where to find slave labor. So he hired kids at $5 a row of grape plants. Like the row went like, where is the end of this row? And so I needed a guitar amplifier because my buddies had started a garage band. I needed $125. I needed 25 rows. So what did I do? I worked there. Got abused by this farmer who used to walk by and yell at it, don't clip that, don't tie that, you're stupid, get out of here. There was that kind of thing. But why did I do that? I needed to earn the money. That was a purpose. Earn the money, get what I needed, move on. And this is what we all do. Many of you work to afford things, and you think this is why you work. To pay for stuff, to get promoted, to build a better life, to buy more stuff. That's not a bad reason. Those are all good reasons, but it's not the reason. And what happens is we work, we get into a job, and initially we're like, yes, a job. And then we're in there for 10 minutes, it's like, this sucks, like this is terrible. And then we work and we get angry and we start to resent it, but we keep doing it. We start thinking about where we could be if we weren't there. We start going, then we get reflective, like, man, why do I have to work to live? Or maybe I have to live to work. I don't really know. The next thing you know, we have a great pop song. 1981, Huey Lewis and the News. They come out with this song, Working for a Living. Look at these lyrics. Hey, I'm not complaining because I really need the work. Hitting up my buddies got me feeling like a jerk. $100 car note, $200 rent. I get a check on Friday, but it's already spent. Working for a living and a working. I'm taking what they're giving because I'm working for a living. Snappy tune. Dismal existence. Right? What's the point? I want you to look at work differently. I want you to look at it the way God looks at it. Because your work, whatever it is, has meaning, Because we've spent a large part of this morning telling you that you have meaning, and it means something to God. I want you to look at your job as an opportunity. Kids, you are not off the hook. You have a job. You're to get your butt up every day and get to school and do your best. And oh, by the way, do what your mama and your daddy tells you to do. That is your job. And here's the deal. I want you all of us, me too, I want you to look at your work as God's gift to you. You know why? Because the glory of God goes to him. He is going to show his purpose through you and in you. Older workers, you retired folks, I know there's a couple in here, you are not off the hook either. Like you might be saying, yeah, I've been working 50 years, I'm done, I just need to go fishing. No, you've got great experience. You have displayed something that's amazing over the course of decades. And there's a church full of young people running around here that need your experience. The kids need your help in the back. Teenagers that need to hear from you. Young families that want to know how you got to where you got. Man, you've got a great purpose from your work still. Same writer, Paul, different city. Go over to the right a few pages, and you'll end up in a book called, or a writing called Colossians. Okay? It's another place. It's another church. Paul's writing to them. In chapter 3, at verse 23, he writes this: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. It's such a beautiful chapter, Colossians chapter 3. There's so much that he talks about there about the life of somebody who's living for God, the Christian life. It's one of my favorite places in the Bible. At the very beginning of that chapter, he says, seek God. Put to death things that are not of God. And then in a really beautiful illustration in verse 12 of that same chapter, the NIV does the New International Version of the Bible, which is what we have here, does a beautiful job of talking about putting on love like you would put on a garment, a coat, on a rainy, cold day. That's what people should experience from us when they encounter us. Love and forgiveness. And at one point he says, let Christ rule in your heart. That means the glory of God just written in a different way. That's what we would refer to. That's what we would seek out. That's what we would be about when we are carrying out our purpose, doing everything for God. See, your purpose is to worship God with your life. Imagine committing that kind of attitude to your workplace. You know what would happen when you would walk into your workplace? If you said that tomorrow when you walked in there, you would walk in there with absolutely no obligation to them or them to you. Your obligation would be to God, that he has you under this purpose. You would go in there a completely different person. You would go in there with goodwill. And right now there's somebody who just popped into your head and you're like, nah, ain't no way I'm going in there with any goodwill to that person. But you would. The glory of God moves you to that. You would go in there with a singleness of heart, meaning that your sole focus would be him. And you know what would happen? You would thrive in that position. You would be much more obedient. Maybe not to the man or whoever that is, but you would be obedient to the God who says, I've given you this wonderful opportunity to showcase who I am. Give some effort. Be cheerful. Maybe you have to look at it as like your duty to the man is achieved when you've achieved your duty to God. Kids, the man is your mama. She tells you what to do. Imagine doing exactly what they asked you to do. You might be thinking, there's somebody thinking this, well, this is really easy for him to say. He works in a church. What does he know? Like if he knew that person that I work with or work for, there's no way he's ever worked anywhere else. And I'm not going to give you a detailed resume about where I've worked. All I will tell you is that I have my own stories. I'll go toe to toe with any of you. I'll sit and we can share, horror stories of work. I don't really think that's the most important thing. I've worked out of church way longer than I ever worked at church, but I will say this, and this is the most important piece of it. I held a lot of roles and a lot of jobs before I was ever following God. And I've held roles and jobs after I decided to follow God. And I can tell you, this is just from my own experience. Like if we were sitting down and having coffee, I would just say, hey, the difference is completely amazing and could not be further apart. I have great confidence in saying that I'm better. I'm a better employee. I'm a better person, and you would be too. You're going to be a better boss, employee, contractor, business owner, server, student, son, daughter, nurse, public servant, whatever you are. See, when you dedicate your work like this to this overarching purpose, and then you couple it to a daily time where you're seeking what God has for you in that moment before you walk out that door, everything will change. You will be at a different level. Here's the deal. I have bills to pay just like you. All right? I have vacations I want to take, things that I want to do. You know, I've raised kids, paid for all that stuff. You have weddings to pay for, diapers to buy, all kinds of things that you need to do. Those are definitely purposes of work, and you should work very hard and diligently to take care of your business. But that is not the purpose of your work. God made us for something bigger. He made you and me to exemplify him to a dark world. At the end of the day, when you strip it all away, that's our purpose. That's our overarching purpose, is to take him in to the world. So what does this mean for you? Well, it might mean that, you may not be able to have this, that's how I am there, this is how I am here kind of mindset. That work you versus the you. You need to bring those together. You need to be you no matter where you are. If you don't believe that you have a purpose beyond that shift that you're getting ready to take, this is going to be a hard teaching for you. But if you think that possibly God is eternal, God is enduring, that God loves me, that I have meaning, that he cares about me, that he is capable of changing the course or setting the course of my life, then your work has to be part of that. Look, you can put God on a shelf when you go to work. You can go ahead and try and do that. You're not fooling yourself. You know what you're doing, and you're not fooling God. He knows where he should be with you. But when you embrace this purpose, that overarching purpose, that glory of God moment from 1 Corinthians, this 3:23 verse becomes not easy, but it becomes explainable. It becomes doable. And when you go into your work like that with that mindset, you're going to be better. And the reason you're going to be better is because God has called you to be better. You're going to care more about your job because God cares about your job. You might be sitting in a job right now that you've known for a long time you have to get out of because you were built for something different and you haven't quite figured out what that is, or you know what that is, but it would take a step for you to be able to start to fulfill the way God made you, because all of you have skills, talents, and gifts that you can leverage for him. You're going to be a better teammate. You're going to be more joyful. You might be that inspirational spark in your workplace. You might say, inspiration went away a long time ago in my workplace. Why aren't you it? You can be it. Live out your purpose. Embrace your work. God is central to who you are. Look for him. Who knows what could happen? Remember what I said at the beginning. Carry this with you. There is purpose. Your purpose is an opportunity. When I was 16 years old, I worked at a Boy Scout summer camp. I was on the staff there, and each staff member was assigned a troop when they would come in for the week. And there was a kid in this troop that I was watching after who was being bullied by the other kids in his troop, including his own brothers. And it really made me angry because I had been bullied, and I knew what this was like. So I kind of put my arm around him, and I kind of mentored him for the week. And I remember at some point, it's been 40 years since I've been to this place, but I remember standing on that beautiful hillside there in Western New York one day thinking, this actually means something. Helping this person actually means something. And I actually started to be able to see a clear thread of the title helper that was sort of in the fabric of my life. And I had a lot of roles after that where I could see that I was in positions where I could help people, but for so long I lived my life without God that I never considered that there was a bigger purpose. I was worried about surviving, paying my bills, taking care of my family, which is noble things to do, but I was missing out on a lot of purpose that I could have had, and it wasn't until I started really dialing into what God had to say and stop being myopic and selfish, but starting to embrace that maybe that there was a bigger purpose. And I say all that just to tell you that there is something that is about where you're at that you have no clue how that's going to be used down the road. And all I'm saying is that it's so important for you to think about being open to that possibility that maybe this miserable place that you're at is setting you up for something further down the road that is not going to be revealed unless you look at it like this is part of who I am. What could God be forming in you if you looked at this job that you're in with a bigger picture? But you have to be open. You have to think, man, my purpose is an opportunity. So what I want you to do is I want you to get in there and do that and work hard and seek him, and don't leave your house or apartment, wherever you're at, to go to work without taking a few minutes and dedicating that shift and that moment and that time and that client and that customer to God, and then go out and give them your absolute very best. Live out your purpose, because you never know how God is going to use that, but he does, because he made you, because he loves you, because you're precious. He loves you so much, and he wants you to live out your purpose. He knows what you're capable of. So let's get up tomorrow. Let's get after it on purpose.
Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.